Hello my fellow gamers and welcome once again to Perafilozof City Skylines video. In the previous video I had finally reached 100,000 population in my city of Bedrock in this city on the hard mode in which I plan to reach 1 million population. So now all I have to do is get another 900,000. I noticed while playing that I had a few problems with the traffic. Well, I wouldn't call them exactly problems, but I didn't like how the traffic was flowing in certain places. So what I wanted to do was change this. For example, here I notice, especially it's noticeable on speed 3, that these vehicles come off from here, go down to this intersection, and then enter this part of the city through here. What I would like to switch is for them to go from here into this highway, then from here for them to turn into this one, and then from this one to be able to go again into this one down here, and then to find a way to get into this part of the city. I could do the same down here so that they would have the ability to go from here into one of these ramps by going into this highway from this one. So this should reduce the number of vehicles that are going to use this ramp, go down into these streets, and then cross into this part of the city over here. I, for some reason, do not have any residential demand, and my senior account is up to 27% now. If you remember, in some of the previous episodes I told you that I would like it to be below 20%. Well, now it's almost 30%, and this is because it takes so long for me to get any new residential demand. Now, I'm afraid that this might be caused by the amount of taxes, because my taxes are up to 12% on the low density and 13% on the high density, something that I would like to test out, and I will reduce these taxes down to 11% for both of the residential areas, hoping that this would have a positive effect. And you can see here instantly there are buildings coming up in these zones which previously were just not zoned at all. Here again, well, they were zoned, but no new buildings were popping up, and you can see over here as well. So it was the taxes which were preventing the residential demand to come up, and you can see now it's at a low, while it previously wouldn't even show up. But the trouble is now that I'm going to start losing money because I have lowered my taxes. In that regard, I will have to start either making some other areas pay more or reduce my budget. Now, once again, I will try increasing the taxes for the commercial areas and for the industry. Now, once I see areas of the city that say that the taxes are too high, I'm going to use those districts and then use the police on them for taxation and reduce the taxes by 2% on those areas, because I have a feeling that it might be possible that some areas, some districts will want to pay taxes 30%, while others may not. So that's why I will reduce the taxes on the districts which say that the taxes are too high. An additional thing that I need to do is reduce my expenses. For example, I told you in some of the previous videos that I'm paying a lot for the policy for distribution of smoke detectors. Now I can go citywide and turn it on and then off, and now it's going to be off for the entire city, and this weekly policy expense will go down, I think, about half, because the other half is paying for the parks and recreation. This should help me have a better balanced budget, and when I'm mentioning the budget, I will need to do some reductions there as well. I will reduce the budget for ships, for trains, and for the metros as well. I had turned off some metro stations, but now I'll be reducing that budget. I had reduced the budget for the parks and decorations back to 100% from 105. Same thing for the education, and now I may end up having to reduce these two as well. But the trick is that these two, with their increased area of effect because of the higher budget, help me cover more of the areas with their influence. So if I were to reduce their budget, I would lose the influence from those buildings on some of the areas, on some of the zones, which would not be a good idea. I'm still missing around 4,000, almost 4,500 workers so I need to increase my residential demand by reducing the taxes, have new buildings pop up, and this seems to have helped. Now that I've reduced the taxes, I more often have the demand for residential. But I will need to keep an eye on, like I said, for the industrial areas who are going to start saying the taxes are too high. And you can see this area here says that the taxes are too high. Therefore, I will have to go into this district, use a policy for taxation, and have tax relief for industry if that's even an option. High density residential, commercial, offices, residential, and there is no policy to reduce the taxes on the industry. I did not expect this. I could have swore there was a policy to reduce the taxes on the industry. I guess I will now have to return the tax back to 12% as the industry refuses to pay this high of a tax. I can take a look at the other zones to which I have increased the taxes. I don't see the commercial zones saying that the taxes are too high, and I did increase their taxes to 13% to both low and high density, so hopefully they will not ask me to reduce their taxes. Additionally, what I can do you see now from 9,000 plus on weekly policy expenses, I'm down to 4,000. An additional thing that I could try and do is find a way to increase the level of buildings so that they will pay higher taxes. You can see here that the level of the high density is mostly at level 3 and only a few of them are at level 4, therefore the tax for level 4 isn't as high as for level 3. The same goes for the low density, and the same goes for the commercial. You can see only a few of them are at level 3 and only 8,000 taxes come from that, while 78,000 of the money from taxes comes from level 2. I believe it's similar for the offices. Not a single office is at level 3, so you have to find ways to increase the levels of these buildings in order to gain more taxes. This is problematic because on the hard mode it is harder to level up buildings. I guess I will speed up the game now and take a look over these districts to see if there's any district as for the commercial areas that says the taxes are too high. And this should also help to reduce the demand for commercial areas, as they will drop in demand like the residential areas have increased in demand when I reduce their taxes, so the commercial areas will drop in the demand because their taxes have been increased. How did this affect the happiness? The residential happiness is at 90%. Commercial still at 75. I think this is one of the hardest happiness levels to raise. I've never seen it in my city above 80%. One additional thing that I need to do is reduce the overall amount of industry, because I am importing a lot to produce a lot which I export, and I do not need this much. Also, I do not have enough workers for all this industry. So I will have to keep doing restructuring of these areas to reduce the actual amount of industry. For example, in this area, which I believe I already once reduced down from 3 rows of industry down to 2. Now I will have to do this again and reduce this even further, because I'm exporting a lot from these industrial buildings. Some of them are not exporting, as you can see, but a lot of them are. So I will go here and this zone at least one part of this industry. Although when I think about it, this is the industry that is at level 3, and I would rather dezone the industry that's at a level 2, because the industry at level 2 uses less educated population, and I want the better educated teams to have jobs. So these are the areas which I will dezone and bulldoze these industrial buildings and switch them up for higher amounts of commercial. I hadn't even fixed up this zone when I expanded the commercial area the last time. Now it's better. For example, what I will need to do is also increase the amount of residential area here. So I will move the high density commercial areas over here where the industry used to be, bulldoze the previous commercial areas that are over here, and move the offices further to the left so that I will have some more room for residential areas. Alright, so now that this rebalance has been done here, I will need to search for other areas where I can do the same rebalancing and switch over from the industry back to the residential areas. I now constantly have demand for residential, and I think this area over here will have been filled. And yes, so it is. I can add even more residential areas now over here for them to be built up and more teams to move in, and that way I will finally have enough workers for all these jobs. Not sure why this office was abandoned. I didn't think it was gonna be an office before I bulldozed it. Hopefully it wasn't because of the taxes. So let's see where else. Down here I even have industry at level 1. So this part of the city has very poor coverage, as you can see here, very poor health coverage. Also a lot of noise pollution, and the coverage from the other services is very low as well. So definitely a good place to dezone the industry. Alright, that's enough rebuilding for this area. And up here also the same thing. There are plenty of buildings here at level 2, the industrial buildings, that I can now switch over for the different zones. So this would be switched so that this would become a residential zone, next to it an office zone, next to it a commercial zone. There will definitely be a need to balance more. I tried to stay away from balancing these areas, but it's just simply a must to try and get the best coverage from services, to get the best balance of imports and exports. I believe I can see now that the amount of exports has dropped, and also the amount of imports will drop as fewer industrial buildings need to be built. I seem to have a problem with traffic here. I think the problem is that these guys who come into the furthest right lane try to go over to the left, while they block the traffic that is coming off of here. So this did not work out the way I wanted it to, so this will require a small change. This street leads down, so even if I were to go below this one and connect to this one, they would still need a way to get into this street through here somewhere. So this one would be going up, for this one to be connected to this one like this, and then from here they would have to have an entrance into this part of the city through here, and then from here they have an off-ramp here, and I could give them another off-ramp here as well. I just need to return the highway back to its original place. I'm pretty sure there should not be a problem here. Alright, that fixes that. And now we are back in business. So now these vehicles can go below here and not stop the traffic coming off of here and enter this part of the city through here. They can still go down here and through these streets, but this should help separate the traffic into two different pathways. Alright, so if I look at these areas, the high density residential buildings have managed to fill up most of these zones. In the old parts of the city where I switched some of the low density residential for high density, those zones have been filled with high density buildings as well. So reducing the taxes did help in getting more teams to move in. The population did stay the same because I have switched up some of the areas, and I was losing a lot of sims per day, because you can see that there are 100 deaths more than birds per week, so I'm losing population continuously through this. And you can see that I have way too many seniors. This just has to be fixed by zoning faster than they age, and I was zoning slower because I had such low demand. Now this should, together with reducing the amount of industry and reducing the amount of necessary jobs, help to balance out the city. Over here I also have this large amount of industry. It's not that big of an industry area, but the trick is that there are a lot of these buildings, and they are probably all exporting. Well, a good number of them are exporting, not all of them. So I was thinking of reducing this area by these two thin lines, thin squares, moving the commercial area down closer to the industry, and then switching the old part of the commercial for bigger office buildings. This should also help to reduce the amount of sound pollution that's going into the residential areas. Alright, my budget is at around 15,000, which is good. It means that I'm not losing money. The taxes seem to have not created any problems where buildings are going abandoned because of high taxes. The industry will not accept 13% taxes, but the offices and commercial areas have accepted taxes at 13%. The residential demand has dropped. I am wondering whether I could even get more of these residential buildings built. I'm annoyed because this area here has lost its proper zoning squares. Let me try and get this back. There, that fixed it. So I could add even another residential zone here, and then at the end I could have an office area and a commercial area. Another residential area here, 4x4, then offices, 4x4, and I may actually require a cross street here at this point before the commercial area. If I had a cross street going from left to right, so this one should go from right to left. And the end of this zone will obviously end as commercial. There might not be enough space for anything else. For these areas to level up, yes, I was right, I am missing a park here. I don't think I need too big and too expensive of a park, because it just needs to cover a small area. Let me try and find smaller park and a less expensive one. This one should do the trick nicely. I'm not seeing. Oh right, it doesn't have power. Once it gains power, it should be able to level up these buildings with better coverage. The power should start expanding over here, and it is now, and now the coverage from the park should make sure that these buildings level up. They're still not gaining the same color as the rest of them, which makes me very unsatisfied, and this park is obviously not good enough. This one costs 150 per week, this one costs 60. It's not a big difference, and the effect is obviously not strong enough, so I'll have to switch the park for this one. This should now make sure that these areas have better coverage from the parks. This district can be offices and commercial. so big business benefactor as a policy. Alright, so I've pretty much reached the end point of this part of the city. For the city to grow, I will have to go into this part of the city for the new zones. This is pretty much the maximum I can get out of these areas, and the number of jobs is kind of better now. I have fewer open jobs, but still not as good as I was hoping this to become. This piece of road here cannot lead anywhere, so I'll just bulldoze it. I haven't checked the traffic in a while. Let's see how this new off-ramp here is working. Definitely far better than the one before that was creating a huge traffic jam here. This one just keeps the traffic contained to the most left lane, which then takes the traffic where it wants to go, while the middle and the right lane are free to take the traffic over here into this part of the city. I probably haven't expanded the bus network down here, which I should do right now. The metro is close enough here, but it does not have a full connection with these areas, so I've been thinking of adding some more metro here and then connect up here with this one. This area is kind of thin enough that it can support just one metro stop going through here, so this line should work for the next part of the city as well as this one. I'll go down here and then connect pretty much at this stop here. This should provide a continuous line to go through here. Alright, let's take a look at the level of these buildings. I see some level 3s, so even some level 2s, so it may be down to the service coverage. That care and healthcare are alright, as well as fire safety, and as for the police, this area is covered by police as well. There is pretty good coverage by parks, maybe not the best. But so far this area looks covered well enough that they should be able to level up. They just need these teams to become better educated. Now when I mentioned that, there is an elementary school here. The first high school is way up here. So I could actually need a new high school here if I want this area to get better education. I just see where the high school would go. Now one thing that I've kind of forgotten about is that I would need a power station and some incinerators down here. So if I were to continue this street, I would probably not have enough space here for an actual incinerator. Or would I? Nope, I would not. So the incinerators would have to go either over here, or I would just need to move the highway a little bit to provide enough room here for those incinerators. So I will have an incinerator here. I won't have a power station here because I don't really need a new one, and the incineration plant will produce some power on its own. Another thing that it will produce is pollution in this area over here. So I need to get rid of these buildings here because they will start getting sick if I leave them here zoned like this. Let's see, how far do I need to unzone? Everything that's over here needs to be unzoned so that they do not get sick from the pollution created by the incineration plant. This should be far enough. If I'm going to have these areas empty, I might as well use them for something. I don't think that the commercial areas can get sick. They might just not level up so quickly. Alright, so how exactly is my pollution? I need to check on the water pollution, still far away from the pumps, but just to make sure that no pump is close enough to get polluted. Let's move this one a bit further away. Power connection needs to be brought here. They should take care of this. I do not need any more capacity for power or water, but what I do need to do is to make sure that these areas have enough garbage capacity, which this incinerator should do. Now, in general, this area is pretty much finished. There is only the high school, which I was trying to find a spot for and didn't build. So I guess it can go about here if this one was all the way up here. Hopefully this will make all of these buildings level up, and so it does. The interesting thing is that the high school coverage has leveled up these buildings just from the area of effect rather than because they are educated. I mean, they're certainly not educated just after I planted it. Some time would have to have passed. So I'm guessing that the actual area effect of the high school has leveled up these buildings, which is something that's rather annoying, which means that if you want to level up buildings, they have to be covered, even though they're not residential buildings, and even though the workers haven't even been educated yet the buildings will level up just because they're covered by an area effect of a school. This is a gameplay mechanic that I honestly do not like. And it could also be one of the explanation factors for why some of my areas have stayed at lower levels. For example, you can see here that the university coverage comes up to the street, and so does the second level of offices. These are at level 1, while the ones next door are at level 2, and it could be explained because of the coverage from the university. This is something I do not approve, and I honestly do not like, because there's no way you can cover these areas and these zones with so many services. They cost way too much for this to become profitable. I mean, if I were to have to really cover every square inch of these roads with the green effect area of an elementary, a high school, a university, a clinic, a crematorium, a fire station, a police station, missed anything? Transportation, I would pretty much go bankrupt at that point. So this is honestly, even though you do gain more money when the building is leveled and you tax it, but this would just not work out, if you ask me, compared to just how much surface area needs to be covered by the area of effect of buildings for this to work out. In any event, I have reached 102,500 population. The amount of jobs available is at 55,600. The amount of workers is at 53,000, so another 2,000 workers, and I will have complete coverage of the jobs that are available. I am not losing money like I did before. The number of seniors is down to 22%. A lot of them seem to have died out, or simply I have zoned more residential and their percentage has dropped. But I do have now more births than deaths, so that's excellent as well. I may spend some time rebalancing these zones because of the industry, because of the imports and the exports off screen and not record, because I think it would take an extensive amount of time to rebalance these areas. So the next time you see this city, it may have a few areas and zones that are going to look a little bit different. In any event, thank you all for watching, and please stay tuned for more.